Okay, 3,
Let's go.
2, 1. Hi guys, thanks for joining. I'm Amanda Armagast, and this is Essence of History, Turkish Romans.
This is Dr. Abbasi, and history is one of my favorite subjects. So I'm very excited about our podcast today.
And my name is Morgan Wykor. I am the patient access supervisor here at Inspired Spine Health, but I'm also a historian. I graduated from St. Olaf College in 2015 with a triple major in ancient studies, classics, and history, and I have done several archaeological excavations, 2 in southern Turkey, 1 at Tel Megiddo in Israel, and 2 at Sarmi Segatuza in Romania. So.
Wow, that is a great background for right person for this topic.
Yeah, who knew?
It's a really exciting background.
Yeah.
Even just hearing you talk about it, I'm like I want to know.
It was
Yeah.
wild, man.
Yeah.
I decided when I was in 2nd grade that I wanted to be an archaeologist when I was at a family friend's cabin in Wabasha, Minnesota, and there was a cornfield that wasn't being cropped that year, and 2nd grade Morgan was playing in the dirt. And I found a little arrowhead, and I have this very clear memory of
That's
picking it
cool.
up, going, "This is the most important thing that's ever been found. No one has seen this
Yeah.
in millions of years," because obviously it was your concept, but
Yeah.
it was just the greatest thing.
I think the curiosity in you is what makes things happen. And, people think about you have to go to extraordinary places, or you have to spend thousands and tens of thousands of dollars to make a discovery. In reality, you have to open just your eyes in
Exactly.
your backyard to make discoveries. This is an amazing thing. But I'm very interested about the name of our podcast that you chose. Would you want to explain?
We've
Yes.
kind of been arguing about it all week. Turkish
We've been
Roman.
trying to come up with the catchiest thing we could do. So the archaeological excavation I did at Antiochia ad Kragum, which is located in southern Turkey. So if you think about the geography of Turkey, there's the island of Crete in the Mediterranean. It's got this little point. It points to a cove, and that's Antioch. So Antiochia. So
And for people who don't know, in almost all historical texts, the word Antioch appears. It has been practically crossroad from Europe, Asia Minor, East and West, and almost in every time you hear or listen to the history of that area, the word Antioch comes practically they talk about that. So that is in today's Turkey.
modern Turkey, yes.
In
Wait, I'm
modern
sorry.
Turkey.
Before we start, what is Antioch? What is that? What does it mean?
So Antiochia, it's a name. So it was used to identify, it's the same as a city name. But there were multiple Antiochs. The one I excavated was Antiochia ad Kragum, Antioch on the cliffs.
Okay.
So it was naturally the whole geography of that area is very mountainous. It's stunningly beautiful, first of all. But we were excavating at Antiochia ad Kragum. So Antioch is just the name.
Do you mind as well to pass those
Yes.
pictures that you have? Maybe Misha can one after another just hold few of them in front of the camera. So it is stunning, truly stunning. This picture that we see there from that area. Yeah, this is the best. This is us doing the best we can do. Wow, that look actually pretty
is not
good.
bad.
That is not bad at all.
I'm
Yeah,
just stoked
that's
on.
good. Thank you. No.
So you took these photos
Yes,
yourself?
these were camera. It was a Walgreens disposable camera. So
This is our special effect. It's called
Yeah.
Misha.
Yeah.
no, and this one has a little bit better view of part of the archaeological site that I was actually excavating. It's pretty hard to see. You can only kind of see one of the buildings, but that's part of the site from the first summer we excavated there.
So tell us about your summer that you spent there. What did you go with the main goal? Like, did you guys already know what you were looking for?
Yes. So with every archaeological excavation, you have to have a research question. There's a question that you answer. There's always multiple questions because there's multiple aspects to everything. So you generally will focus on one in particular question, but you're also gathering as much information as you can.
Of course.
Archaeology, in the general concept of it, the entire thing is destructive. Once I've dug this hole, I can't put the dirt back so someone else can go dig through it again to look into what I've removed. So it's always having that one question, but you're gathering as much information as you can about every detail of what you're doing, because you can't put it back and someone else can't find out.
I always want to ask, is that truly like that you have like a pencil?
Oh yeah.
Like you pencil, like, literally you're like
a duster.
brushing things away.
Yeah, no, there's one of my other...
Give the evidence.
Yeah, no, so...
Is that gentle? Because that dig is going to take a long time.
Well, she was there for the summer.
Methods. There is a good amount of it that is pickaxes, where you are swinging a pickaxe and a shovel, trying to get through as much as you can.
Misha, do you want to show that up for us?
But some of it, a good chunk of it is trowels, brushes, and little teeny tiny dustpans that you're trying to get.
And lots of patience.
Lots of patience. I always describe it as you're going to do the exact same motion 10,000 times and probably find nothing.
Yeah.
But that 10,001,
That is
where there's something
Where
there,
you find it, yeah.
you're going to do it again.
I bet you're so excited.
You discover a piece of history.
And it's just truly the most insane experience of finding these things and truly connecting with these people as they were. Oh, that's a better one of kind of an active site.
So describe this picture to us. What is happening in this picture?
So this is what's, for lack of a better term, it's a trench. So in this picture we have, I believe it's my professor and another probably a dig student or somebody else. I can't see their faces and it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
So you can see there's kind of that roped off area. So
and a grid. You create a grid and you look grid by grid.
Correct. So you go grid by grid, square by square, millimeter by millimeter in some situations. In other situations, that there's... so the second summer I worked in Turkey, we were clearing an entirely new area that had never been excavated. So there's 1,000 years of dirt and fallen rock and garbage.
And farther you dig, farther back in history you go.
Correct. Yep. So the deeper your hole, the farther back in time you're going. And it's pretty wild. And there's moments where you're truly digging through thousands of years in a single swing of your pickaxe.
So let me explain a concept in nature that just take your backyard. Don't do anything to your backyard and you see vegetation. That vegetation becomes compost and then a new vegetation comes on top of it. And depending on literally depending on the climate, it is almost like a natural thing and like a clock. How much more dirt, vegetation, material you are adding year after year after year. Just do that for a few years in your backyard, then you understand what we are talking about. And so practically, if a site is abandoned, with time, more material just accumulates on top of that. So, and that is the concept of going deeper, and that enables you to go back in the history. And obviously, many of the material that is there get destroyed, but mostly you are looking for indestructible evidence. Like, tell me, what did you find, or what were you looking for?
So the first year we were working in Turkey, we were looking at an agora. So it's the city center. So we were excavating, the main thing of this was a bathhouse. So we were working on the area, the bathhouse itself, and then the area around it. So it was the city center. So we were working to clear out stuff like the colonnaded streets. And again, I do have to disclaimer, these are personal photos.
Okay.
Any additional information, I am sorry to Professor Hoff
so
or
this photo we're
Professor
looking
Howe.
at right now. This is
that's
part
the
of-
bath.
Okay.
So
Yeah, it looks like a Turkish bath almost.
it is the Turkish bath. It is the original Turkish bath. Yes, if you ever have the opportunity to go to a modern Turkish bath, go.
I've heard.
So,
It's amazing.
do you mind to look at that? What makes that bath old Turkish bath?
It's a Roman Turkish bath. So
okay,
what?
that's a point. That is still from the old Rome.
Correct. So this site was actually found by the owner of the land. His name was Rami. He was tilling the land for his farm. It's his farm.
Yeah.
And he kept pulling up tiles. So the individual tiles of a mosaic, they're called tesserae.
Let's
So-
look at that.
As he's digging his farm, keeps pulling up more and more and more of these little teeny tiny, less than 1 centimeter square tiles, and calls a professor who has been excavating in the area, and they find this bath, which is one of the most intact mosaics and
Wow.
bathhouses so far found in Turkey. So they were excavating this bath, and then they continued to expand the excavation to the neighboring areas, other buildings, fleshing out. Oh, I'm sorry, hit the microphone. Building and fleshing out the city. So the first year we were working in the city center, and then the second summer we were excavating the Acropolis, which was an outcropping truly on the tip of a cliff, where you are going probably another 20 meters, and then you're going straight. You can go another 20 meters from where we were working, and then you were going straight down about a lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
A lot.
No, I know we all get busy in our life with lots of things. This is a little more of a philosophical question for both of you. Why should we know about all of that? Why is it important to us to see how they have taken a bath 2,000 years ago or 1,000 years ago? Amanda, why do you think it is important for humanity to research
Yeah.
its roots?
Well, about baths specifically, Turkish people and Roman people aren't the only ones with bathhouses or relaxation places and things like that. I think it's important to know just how people lived and why people lived certain ways, because then we can carry that on for ourselves. But I think Morgan can probably provide a better,
why should we
more
know about
technical
that?
answer.
As somebody who I'm asking, as somebody who's truly fond of history, I want to know your opinion. Why is it important for us spending money, effort, or life to know about things like this?
So I always think back, I couldn't tell you who said it, but it's, the old phrase, those who don't study history are truly doomed to repeat it.
Perfect.
And so much of, you think back on even just the last 100 years, the colonization of the entire world, I'm sorry, not 100 years, but, several hundred years. The UK taking over the world, how the entire colonization of history has always happened, and how people have always interacted with one another. Culture conquering culture, culture interacting with culture. If we don't understand how people previously navigated that very sticky thicket, we can't help improve how we do it today. We can learn from the mistakes that have already been made, so we don't have to do it again. We can prevent it.
It has a practical result on our current life. It's not just the esoteric, nostalgic thing about the beauty of mosaic. Now, I really love that quote, and it's a very famous quote that you need to know your history, because most of the mistakes we make now have been done in the past. Now, what you are doing, what you are describing, is about giving aspect to our history. Making it truly will make us understand that it's not just a word in the book. It's about that arrowhead. It enables us to understand how did they truly hunt, and this part of the history enable us to know our heritage, to know our past, and then we can put the historical facts, or make sure they are facts and not the fabricated, number one. Secondly, to put it in perspective and understand how events came to be.
Right. And another
That's
really
priceless.
Another really important thing that was always so important to me was, one, we all know history was written by the victors.
Yes.
Whoever won at the end of that battle gets to decide how that story was told. So every emperor who had a bad takeover is only going to say that the emperor before him was a bad guy. He was ridiculous. And then not only that, so you have to navigate, well, okay, so how are they actually, I'm getting the propaganda side here. I'm getting what was posted on the wall after the victory was won to announce that they won this glorious victory over the barbarians of the East.
Yeah.
But they weren't barbarians, and is that really all that happened?
Yeah.
And then there's the fun aspect of we know about the top 1% of the world, of that world. But for Joe Schmo, who was hanging out at Antioch, just trying to sell his bread in the Agora, what was his life like?
Agora. What's Agora?
It's the kind of pop quiz. It's like the city center. So
it's practically the open space.
Yeah, it's just the open space.
Agoraphobia.
Fear of open space. So it's the open courtyard. It's the city center.
But that's with their bazaar. That's where they did
their daily business. Yes, that was the business
where the
center.
merchants set up shop and
It was the commercial center.
Did people hang out there too and like play games? And games
That
and stuff?
I'm sure they did. I think actually we did.
That is where they talk.
I think we had found a game.
They met each. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like children playing stick
I'm
games.
having a flashback.
Are you really?
I think we found some kind of game, or I had heard from one of the other archaeologists.
They didn't have daycare, you know.
Your kids weren't at the
daycare. They didn't go to school. They
No.
just had to go with them.
Only the word for school is ludus. So like a gladiatorial ludus was where the gladiators went to train. But ludus is also
Who
game.
trained them? What was the name of the person who trained them in the ludus? Doctore.
Oh yeah.
Doctore.
Doctor, thank you. I
Yeah.
was going to do
Meaning the
slip.
teacher. Yeah.
Sorry, professors from St. Olaf, I have not kept up on my
That
Latin and
is
ancient
good.
Greek. You guys
That
did
is
a great
good.
job, but
You're
I
doing a
didn't
great
keep
job.
up on it.
You are
doing a great
job. So
So-
the topic of this is the kind of I know you were confused about the topic Turkish Romans, and when you and I were discussing it, one of the things you brought up was pottery and telling the difference between Turkish people and Roman people by their pottery.
Yes.
Things like
First of all, how are they different? Turkish and Roman people, how are they different?
So that was basically the question that was posed as was my bachelor's thesis that and people spend their lives studying that. So I couldn't give you a finite, there isn't a 2-sentence answer for what's the difference.
Do you agree
Because
Well, there's not a 2-sentence, but I'm Azeri, I'm Turkish origin. So my whole family we speak Turkish at home. With my parent, I spoke Turkish, not Persian.
Türkçe konuşmayı bilmiyorum. That's all I remember.
You bilmiren, Turkish bilmiren.
No, bilmiyorum. I thought that was I don't know.
So no. You said with Turkish dialect. Not I'm Azeri.
Okay.
Our Turkish or Azeri is a little different. You said with the perfect Turkish dialect that you don't speak Turkish, and I said with the Azeri dialect you don't speak Turkish, but you're speaking Turkish.
Yeah, no,
So,
that was a pitfall I got myself into when I tried to say I don't speak Turkish, and then they're like, okay.
You perfect the accent specifically to say, I don't know.
I remember how to count to 10, say I love you, and I don't speak Turkish.
So how do you count until 10?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Ah, I'm impressed. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
for you, what is the difference between Turkish people and Roman people?
now we have to talk a little about history, because the history in this area of the world, which practically just northern of Mesopotamia, has been very contested area. The reason for that is this area is not too cold like Europe or Siberia. It's not too hot and arid and deserty like Northern Africa or Arabian Peninsula. There is water, you can do agriculture. So this has been an area that the Indo-German people from north and east, and then the Semite people from the Africa and south, they come together over thousands of years. They have colliding in that place together. Now, none of them were called Turkish or Turkish origin originally. The actually Turkish origin people came from would be today's Mongolia and that area, this so-called the riders, their horse riders, these people on the horse that they could ride well, they had bow and arrow. They came in two big groups. The first group were the Tatars, and the second groups were obviously the Mongols. and they brought lots of tradition. Actually, they captured everything, including China. So lots of Chinese technology, tradition, gunpowder. They came through these Mongols from east to west. But something happened. When they came, they weren't enough to truly capture everything. By the way, they were pretty brutal.
Yeah.
They raped,
Yeah,
they
rape, pillage.
and so on and so forth. But something happened. They set root there. They mixed with the local group and they brought the language. So if you go from Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan to Iranian Azerbaijan, all the way to Turkey, they practically spread the whole culture somewhere between 9th century and 13th century. They spread out there. Until then, this area was mostly Arab and Roman, Greek populated area. And it started all about 2,500 years ago, that most of the so-called, or today's Western Turkey, was part of the Persian Empire. I'm sure you guys have heard about the 300, the movie. Now,
Battle of Thermopylae.
Yeah, by the way, the Persians kicked their asses.
Yeah, they really did.
They did.
Yeah, they really, really did.
But what people don't know, it wasn't the Spartans. They weren't the heroes. What happened, they went and actually invaded in the Western Turkey. They burned and pillaged and raped the Greek, the practically monastery or whatever their praying center was. And because they were under Persian protection, the Persian Empire had to step in to stop the Spartan spread the anarchy there. Now, what happened after that is that this area was back and forth between Greek and Persian Empire, back and forth. And then when around 100 before, or 100 to 150 before Christ, the Roman Empire really increased in its dominance there. This area, they were all captured by Roman Empire. And then for another 500 years, that area went between Persian and the Roman. It was that so-called 300 years war between Persian and the Roman Empire, until the rise of Islam and Arab dominance in that region. And then guess what? Then was again war between the Arabs and the Roman. Now, everybody knows about that in 300 that the Christianity got accepted in Roman Empire, especially in the Byzantine or Eastern Roman Empire. And as a matter of fact, Constantinople means city of Constantine, because Emperor Constantine accepted Christianity and created that area. And then about few hundred years later, they came the Crusades, meaning that this area, Antioch including, it was the path that all the Crusaders, all the way from Sweden down to Italy, and that was actually how they mobilized their forces, came down. It's a very good story that people in that region actually, they hated that, because these people would come and go to their cities and cause lots of trouble and so on. They were warriors. They wanted to war.
And they don't respect like the other. They think they're at the top.
Yeah.
So they're not going to respect these workers, these merchants.
These are mercenaries, okay? So, and I'm sure, you know, in your excavation, you saw lots of this after thing of the Crusaders and back and forth. So this area is a combination of Persian, Greek, Roman, Mongols, and Turkish. They all come together, and in one area you find Roman stuff. In the 100 meter later or yards around that, you find a Arabic artifact, and so on and so forth. So this is like a treasure chest of knowledge that we can gain, because all of them came together, not peacefully most of the time,
most of the time
in that area. But so I'm very interested to find out, what did you find yourself that was so interesting?
I think we still haven't answered the question, which is, what is the difference between Turkish people and Romans?
So that's the harder one to find. So the question that I posed as part of my bachelor's thesis was, how did these people self-identify?
Yep.
So the people who were day-to-day average Joe schmoes did they think of themselves as Romans? Did they think of themselves as Anatolians? Did they think of themselves as what? And again, that's not a question that you can just say, well, they thought.
In that time frame, people identified themselves with the village they grew up, because 95% of the people in that time frame, they are born, raised, and they died within an area that's about 15 miles from their place of birth. So this identity of a nation, like I'm an Ottoman Turk or I'm an Italian. Italy didn't exist 150 years ago. They were this small little kingdom. Or the idea of the Ottoman Turk, they were imperialists themselves. Like they were the UK of their time, that they were going to the places after the downfall of the Arab, dynasties. And they were seen in many places as invaders themselves. So the idea of how people saw themselves, they saw them as a people of that village. That is what actually the idea of nationalism, a country as like you're American or I'm Persian, these things, Persian is a little different, but generally this idea of national identity is a 200-year-old concept. Before that didn't really exist in that form. Now, the idea is that, are they Roman or are they Turkish? The idea is they were first Greek, then they were Persian Roman, and then they were under influence Persian Roman. And first, in 1100 or 1200, they become this Turkish, they acquired this Turkish Muslim identity with the rise of Ottoman Empire. And the idea of Ottoman Empire was that, it was actually culturally very rich. It was brutal, but it was culturally very rich, and it was actually more tolerant than people think it was. It was very tolerant of, like, you could be a Christian or Roman or Greek under the Ottoman Empire and still, practice, and they didn't try to suppress the identity of the people. So these identities are fluent. It wasn't that you're one or another. So coming back to that your question, were they Roman or Turkish, there wasn't a conflict to be both.
Yeah, and it was a way that the people navigated and took advantage of the things from the Romans that made sense to them. So, for example, in the area around Antioquia, there are numerous bathhouse sites. Bathhouses made sense to the locals. They liked it. It was great. But they already had theaters. So they weren't really about to go build a whole bunch more theaters. So they adapted the things that made sense about Roman culture to them, and, did as much as they had to about the other stuff in order to make the government happy.
Well, these were practical things. People need to take bath.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the elaborate bathhouse with the frigidarium and the caldarium, like those multi-stage, the day-long event of a bathhouse was something that really jived with the locals, and they were like, I'll do that.
No, and I listened to a podcast about jacuzzis recently, and it's
cool,
kind of odd, but other people picked up on that too, and they started taking it to their areas and advancing it, and that's how the jacuzzi came about.
That's hilarious. I did not.
But did you know the Roman, actually, they had in their the original Roman, in their bathhouses, they had this very intricate kind of mechanism to heat up the water and pump it through and so on.
Not to mention the hypocaust floors, which are floors that have. Actually, we were excavating this. I dug a hypocaust. It was a pain at Sarmi Segatuza in Romania. So the floor, it's a raised floor, and underneath there's a fire, and there's hollow bricks along the walls, so it heats the entire floor and the walls.
Heating, 2,000 years old.
Right, it's heated floors.
Yeah,
in ancient
cool.
Rome.
Yeah,
and Romania gets cold, so they had these beautiful, elaborate, like, mansions. We were excavating the governor's mansion, essentially, in Romania, and the entire thing had hypocausted floors. So you have the beautiful plastered walls and the floor layer, and then you remove the ground floor layer that had been very severely damaged, And then you have these beautiful, still standing hypocaust pillars every foot and a half.
Wow.
Now, many of these technologies sadly got lost for 1500 years after that. They called them Dark Ages for a reason. Now, the Roman Empire or Roman society and technology was so far ahead of anything else in that time, like in-floor heating, irrigation, pump, cement. Okay, all of that was very refined, and they could build this fantastic contraption like in-floor heating, circulating water. All of that got rediscovered or rebuilt 1500 years ago, and that is the value of knowing your past. It's not just about the tile, it's about how did they make that tile, and
Why did they make it like that?
No, like the way the Romans make their cement, contrary to Portland cement, did not produce so much carbon dioxide. And now we're trying to relearn that. Now, talking about climate change, that is the value of knowing the past.
Exactly. And another thing that I always think about is when the modern concept of archaeology, the concept of Romanization, it stemmed from the colonial period when, the West was granting the East and these savages the glorious culture of Western civilization. It's the same thought process that was applied to the ancient Roman world. So these cultures were just blank pages that the Romans got to write on when that wasn't the case. And the value of the knowledge of the local people is exponential. One of the big research questions that we had that they had been working on for, I think, years at that point was, what's the water source for Antioch? Where's the well? They have to have fresh water coming from somewhere. Where is it coming from? And they had spent countless hours climbing these hills, and there's like poisonous snakes. Everything in Turkey wants to hurt you. It's not quite like Australia bad, but it's like they've got these things called donkey bees.
Wow.
Yeah, they're like this big, and they're
almost
red.
So dangerous.
Donkey bees. They're donkey bees, and they were always at breakfast.
Very nice.
But they had been trying to find this water source and couldn't figure it out for ages. And they just happened to mention it. Well, they were discussing it, and Rami, the owner of the land, walked up, and he was like, "Oh yeah, it's over there."
He's like,
That's
why
And
did
they
you
were like,
ask?
"I'm sorry, what?" And he's like, "Yeah, guys, like it's soup's like right there."
That's
For them-
so funny.
For them, it's a necessity of life.
And he knew,
Like
and it was the source that had been used since ancient times.
And
that
he's still using it? at
yeah,
that
they
time?
it's a water source, so why not?
They need to survive.
Right.
You know?
So and they're in the it's an arid area, so whatever fresh water source they had, but it
that's
just killed me.
impressive.
Like these professors walking up that moment, like should have just asked Rami.
Yeah, that's
Should have
right.
just
I
asked
bet, I
Rami.
bet after that they asked him every question they could.
Yeah, and Rami was just this. It was Rami, and I think his wife's name was Aisha. They were these just wonderful human beings, and Aisha made our food for like 60 people. She made 2 meals a day, breakfast and
Wow.
lunch for 60 people
Wow.
in the abandoned schoolhouse on a hot plate. And it was, honest to God, some of the most amazing food I have ever had in my life.
Wow.
Let's talk about your experience. Like, people, place.
Yeah,
you didn't just
we're 30
beam
minutes
yourself.
in.
You didn't beam yourself from Minnesota to that place. You had to go there.
No,
Experience.
our dig house was located in Gazi Pasha, and I truly I beam when I think about Gazi Pasha. It was truly this beautiful little quirky town where they built the main road from the city center like 3 kilometers to the beach. They built it wrong, so they laid the pipes wrong, so they had to rip it up and do it again. But everyone in that town, because once a summer, it's suddenly flooded with 30 Americans.
Oh, yeah.
And they all knew that you were the Americans. So I had my fruit lady who you would go and buy these peaches that were truly the size of a softball. You get 7 of them for $1.
Yeah.
And she would curtsy when she handed you the bag, and she would curtsy when she took it, and she would curtsy when she took your money.
So Most of people who go to Turkey go to Istanbul, and let me tell you, Istanbul is like New York. Okay,
it's like New York on steroids.
On steroids.
It's like it's like the square mileage of Istanbul.
Get out of Istanbul. Go to see the rest of the country.
It truly, Gazi Pasha was just this fabulous, stunning little town. And you had the bakery where they knew you by name. And I had the shalvar lady I had the special pants that
That is where you meet really Turkish people, not in Istanbul. In Istanbul, meet New Yorkers.
Yeah, you're going to meet New Yorkers. But in Gazi Pasha, they were just truly the most wonderful people. And I remember my friend and I were walking home one day back to the dig house, and this person just like starts yelling at us, and it's this young man, and he's speaking to us in English, and he goes, "Hey, are you the Americans?" And we were like, "What gave us away?" Yes. And he offers us this bag of figs. It's and he is holding out to us. He goes, "I just want to thank you guys for being here. It means so much that you're willing to come to our city. I just finished going to school in Istanbul. I'm back at home right now to help my mother. But I just want to thank you guys for being here and tell you how much we appreciate that you want to be here and you want to experience our culture and our home." And we go to like take a fig out of the bag, and it's a huge plastic bag, and he goes, no, take the whole thing.
Aww.
And this is something that this man absolutely should and could have sold in the market, but he refused and wanted to give it to us. And
in Istanbul, they would have sold you 5 times the price.
Yeah, they would have jacked up the price. And
Yeah.
but even in Ankara, so we went to Ankara to visit a Hittite site.
A what site?
Hittite.
So
What is-
Hattusha. So it's it's a Neolithic site basically. So the Neolithic revolution is when man stopped being hunter-gatherers and started being city urbanized farmers.
Okay.
I think they even mentioned in the Bible, the Old Testament, the Hittite, because they were a group of people. They always were in war. So it is a very old ethnicity in that region. Go ahead.
So we're trying to get to the site, and our professor, and we had to take 2 flights to get from Gazi Pasha to Ankara, and our professor had said like, "Oh yeah, it's just right outside the city, like no big deal."
Sounds
no,
like you.
it was not right outside the city, and it was a big deal. So my friends and I lovingly called that day the day of the 23 helpful Turkish men.
Aw.
What year was it, man?
This was 2014.
Oh, that
Summer
was just
2014.
That was just
Yeah.
8 years ago.
Yeah. So I had gone, actually, before my first summer, it was the year of the Taksim Square riot. So I remember coming home, like visiting home from college, and I had this trip planned. Everything was set up, and the riot happened. And I go home, and my mom just comes out, and she's like, I have the most beautifully stereotypical Midwestern mom in the entire
Yeah,
world.
I can already
She's
see where this is going.
just the cutest little thing you've ever seen. So I come out of the car, and she goes, "Oh, please, did you hear what happened? Please don't go. How are you going to go?" Oh. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to go." And I remember like that was all over the news was the upset in Turkey. And we were sitting in this little village. I had done another kind of project, doesn't matter. And we were watching the American news, and they're like, "There's riots in all the streets. Things are on fire all over Turkey. It's crazy."
Yeah.
And we like looked
We
out
love
the window.
We love drama.
Yeah, when we like looked out the window, and it's a little like block party, and there's like little kids in a bouncy castle. Like there's like guys selling like the Turkish equivalent of corn dogs, and we're like,
Yeah,
I don't think so. Okay though. But it truly, they were the most welcoming, kind, helpful, most like again on the day of the 23 helpful Turkish men, we had to get like 4.5 hours outside of Ankara, and 2 taxis, 3 buses, and
Tell me about the roads there, because they're not like Midwestern or American roads.
No.
And the cars are not like American cars.
no.
Tell me about that.
One of the things we had one of our jokes was there's 5 things that don't exist in Turkey. Was time isn't real. You were both there for a million years and 10 minutes all at the same time. Infrastructure, again, the joke about
Yeah.
building the street wrong. Planning, any kind of plan that we made, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Time planning, infrastructure, traffic laws didn't
Yeah.
exist. It
They're
was
advisory.
yeah, it's a suggestion.
Amanda, does it sound
I was
so
thinking about
familiar?
Detroit.
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
Or how you drive.
How you address? Yeah.
Oh,
So you know where it's
it's all
come from.
adding up. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's connect. Yeah, no, there's no such thing as
And the
traffic laws.
cars. Tell me about the cars.
They're
that you-
tiny. The bus we drove to and from site every day, you would bounce and like dust would come down from like the little holes around the
gosh.
windows that weren't really sealed on there.
Did they ask you to get out of the bus and push it? If
Uh,
they didn't, you didn't get the full experience.
Yeah. I don't think that happened, but they did pile all of us into a bus and then like way past a weight limit and then tried to drive us on like these truly cliff
Steep cliffs,
mountainside pinpoint turns. And as you're doing this, you're feeling the entire bus kind of like,
Yeah.
and you're like, this is where I die.
Well, they're used to it. That's their life.
Oh yeah,
So
no,
you
it
can trust
doesn't
them to
faze them
drive
at
like that.
all.
They're
And
driving.
Especially how they drive in those roads.
Oh yeah.
Just
Yeah, but
amazing.
they know what they're doing. They do it every day.
Well,
it wasn't interesting. She and I, who have
Well-
had the experience. He said,
well,
well,
dude, that's what they'll tell you.
At least just stay optimistic.
Yeah, no, but it was, they truly, everyone, I don't think I met one person who did not, if I ever reached out for help, there was not one person there who did not absolutely go above and beyond out of their way to not only help get what I needed, but to then make sure that I was happy and had a wonderful experience. And then there's a gift that goes along with
but
it.
let me tell you why. Because for them, that's a necessity of life, to be nice and help each other.
Well,
Here in the United States, you can go to New York and they're total a-holes to you, and you still survive. You get your hamburger, you get your stuff, you go to tourist sites, and you get out of there. You don't have to be nice to survive, but for them, that being nice and helping each other is the necessity of life. Because if you're not nice to people, they will not be nice to you, and someday you get stuck in some place and you die. So this is a natural phenomenon in that area.
well,
You're nice to strangers.
that's true, but you can't just generalize all of the United States.
No, I'm
because
not.
It reminds me of small town
Mhm.
stuff, or like
Oh yeah,
when we had that situation in South Dakota, we were
somebody
stuck-
helped us.
Yeah, we were in South. I mean, this is so off topic, but we were in South Dakota, and this random guy came and changed our tire for us.
Yeah.
And all of that, it's a situation that as well we notice here in smaller places that people truly get out of the way to help each other because that's a necessity of life. Now, how did you communicate with them?
So for pocket dictionaries, a little teeny tiny yellow pocket dictionary, and you would like try and flip through it, and then like your friend had one too, so that one other like guy would be trying to flip through it. But one just back on the helpful people. Well, one, it was pocket dictionaries. Two, at that point, I could say like 4 more words than I can say right now, and that was like kind of better. But we went. I had done a project with Professor Nick Rowell from Purdue University, and he was taking us around and giving us tours of these sites that had not been excavated ever. So these are untouched sites that he had found, and one of them was called Titiopolis. And
What was that?
yes, I know. And as a teenager, were
You
we
could-
stoked out of our minds at the thought of this place being named
Got
Titiopolis?
his headphones on.
Yeah.
tonight.
No, it is truly
Let's go
called
to
Titiopolis.
Titiopolis.
And
City
what's
of
funnier
titties.
is it's a dual hill.
Oh my gosh.
That's the cherry on top.
Oh, it was good. It's still funny now, which is why I started smirking when I thought of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
Titiopolis. Best name ever.
I'm curious if you know the translation.
That's the ancient Roman name. Was for Titan.
Polis is a
Titan.
city.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was
Titus.
no, I know Opolis, like
Yeah.
Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I was wondering,
Like Emperor
who was
Titus.
the first part named
Titus.
from?
Titus means great
Titus.
or big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So we were trying to, and again, it's a hilltop site. So we pulled up, and we're in
Titiopolis.
Titiopolis, and we're in a van, and we pull up, and there's this mosque, and it's this beautiful modern mosque, and there's these like kind of men that are like hanging out, just looking as like pack a little six American, like a bunch of kids come out like with our hiking boots on and our backpacks, like, hey. And Professor Rao, who spoke fluent Turkish, he was, trying to help get us some navigation, like guide, like asking them for is there a good track to get up to the hill. And these two little boys are like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, it was three little boys. They were like, oh yeah, we'll take you. And these little boys in slides are running up this mountain.
Yeah.
As we're in hiking boots, dying, like trying to crawl. And at this point, we'd been doing this for like 3 weeks. So we all thought we were in pretty good shape at this point. And these little kids are just like sprinting past us. And we're like, and they're in truly flip-flops.
That's so funny.
And
for them, is another day.
yeah,
Right?
they're just hanging out in their backyard. So we ended up kind of splitting off, and two of our guys went up, and Professor Rao, the boys ended up going up the hill after Professor Rao had said don't. And
The
we
little
lost.
boys?
No,
Your people.
our team, the other students I was with, they went up there, and Professor Rao came back to us and said, "This is what's called a red site.
What's that?
This is where people are going to get hurt, and this is where you are going to get hurt badly. Just
For what
with
reason?
trying to climb up this mountain of
Oh, I
like
see, I
slipping,
see, I
it's
see.
like
Yeah.
slippery rock,
I
spiky
see.
plants, direct cliffs. It's just not safe terrain to navigate.
I see.
And so we ended up splitting up, and we had these two little boys who were with us, who again didn't speak English, and the other professor I was with didn't speak much English. And I'm so sorry, I can't remember his name, but he was a delightful man. But these little boys, one of them found, and
So you had local
Children.
Turkish scientists or archaeologists with you.
the Professor Rao is American, but he has spent the last like 40 years at this point studying southern Turkey, and he's been there forever. So he was known locally as the Green Giant or the Green Hulk,
Okay.
because he was just at this like 6'3", man was like 62 at the time, could absolutely have bench pressed me, like kindest man. But the minute he was like, he'll drive you truly off a cliff, and you're like, this is safe, we're okay, because Professor Rao's got us. And as soon as Professor Rao said no bueno, we were all like, yes sir,
Yeah.
goodbye.
So what happened with the boys?
So they found a spider, and I'm a very severe arachnophobe. And there's this spider that was like this big, and the little boy goes, and I was like, great, I understand
you know
that.
I
You know that
understand that.
sign language.
I understand
yeah.
that. And then they went, and we were like, oh, good. This poisonous snakes too. So we ended up, and again, then Professor Rao comes back, and he's like, I got to figure out how to get the boys down from this cliff because their walkie-talkie stopped working. And they're like, go back to the van, go find a cafe, hang out, we'll meet you back.
Okay.
So these little boys take us back down the cliff, down the hill, and we're walking through this little village, and their what I can only assume is their family comes out and starts greeting us. And, we try and very politely, we're like, no, we're just going to go. Thank you though. And they're like, no. And they ended up pulling out every chair that they owned into their front yard and getting us water. And they had one glass that we all shared, and they made us some of Turkish tea.
Mm,
Oh God. And I,
very aromatic.
I so clearly remember that was the best Turkish tea I've ever had. And we were sitting there, and they kept, that Turkish word I remember, çok güzel. It's very beautiful.
Very beautiful. Çok
So,
güzel.
yes, so they, there was this woman, and her name in Turkish translates to sweet, sour cherry. It was Aunt Cherry, we learned was her name. And she kept like pointing at I have green eyes, which is very rare in Turkey. So they were like, oh, çok güzel. And then she kept
güzel.
pointing at me and like other men and going,
Oh my god.
and I was like,
very well.
thank you though. Yeah, and then
She wants a Turkish baby with green
Yeah.
eyes.
yeah, and then they were like, oh, you stay with
You could have stayed there. Have
yeah, I
little
could have
kids
gotten married.
and-
Yeah, it was
Right
almost
there.
set up for me.
Çok
And
güzel. Çok
Çok
güzel.
güzel. Oh, and
That's
then
another
Turks
story
means
for another
a lot.
podcast.
And güzel means beautiful.
yeah, so they, I almost got married to Aunt Cherry, but then I kind of lost a little bit of credibility because there was this noise that was happening behind me, and I thought it was a cat. So I was like,
Yeah.
and they were like, No. And I
They
have
don't
a
have-
tattoo of an owl on my foot.
Yeah.
So on my ankle, and they like pointed at my ankle and they're like, "No cat, it's a bird making that noise." So they thought I was kind of an idiot, but
Oh.
you know, didn't get married off in that village.
Yeah.
Didn't get married off in Titiopolis.
Well,
So
Oh, that sucks. That was
yeah,
really,
bummer. It's a
that was
great
awesome.
story though.
Almost.
Yeah, it's a good story.
Now, when you left them, what did they tell you?
They thanked us so.
There's a word they say, güle güle.
That's what it is. Gule gule. Yes.
You know what it
Oh,
means? Do you know what it means?
I don't.
It means güle means laughing or smiling, meaning I am hoping that you go away from here smile while
It's
you're
like go
smiling.
with laughter,
Go with
right?
laughter,
Go with
sweet.
smiles.
laughter,
Yes.
laughter,
Gule
smile,
gule.
smile.
Yes.
Güle güle.
Yes.
I like
I
that.
remember that now. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it truly just the most beautiful place and the most beautiful people, and the food is unreal.
Mhm.
And
Oh, I believe
if
it.
I could hop on a flight tomorrow,
Very
I
organic.
won't show up to work
very
on Monday.
organic.
yeah, and it was just amazing. And the fact that you can walk through these cities, and then as you're walking down the beach, you're truly walking underneath a Roman aqueduct that just is a chunk of it that's just still standing in the middle of their city center, and it was wild.
So
Wow.
this is truly a good kind of advice to anybody who decide to go to Turkey. Spend some time in Istanbul, but don't stay there. It's Turkey, and this area is much bigger than these cities that are tailored for the tourist. So you get the full experience once you step outside of the city. As well, you get to know the real people when you're outside of the city.
And
This has been tremendous.
We have 9 more minutes, if you
Yeah,
don't
more stories.
mind.
Yeah.
I would really love to hear more about like some of the things you found, and just
So-
like what were your thoughts when you were finding it? Because one thing that I think about almost every night before I fall asleep is, what if my entire world turns into stone, and then
that's a very morbid
no,
thing to
I
think
know
about
it
every day.
is, I know it
Okay.
is, but because I have chickens.
Yes.
And I have store-bought eggs in my fridge, so I always think, like, if my entire world turned to stone and people came and walked through it, what are they going to think
Yeah,
about me?
it's the Pompeii concept.
It is.
if my
That's actually
entire
exactly what I say.
if
is-
my entire world was frozen, how would people think I lived?
Exactly.
And so the first year I was in Turkey, I kind of got skunked. I didn't really find any good artifacts. My second year, though, nailed it. So I was the supervisor of Trench A1, Acropolis 1. So as soon as you came up the hill, the first building, the first square you saw was
Acropolis or necropolis?
Acropolis.
Acropolis.
No, we were not a necropolis. That was on a different hill. So we were excavating this single building, and it was actually, fun fact. Found my
Your
student
book.
dig log.
Isn't that so cool that she has
So this
it?
is my dig log, and I actually wrote down little Turkish words apparently. So
Yeah, to
stuff
help you
like, I'm
remember.
not gonna pronounce them now, but like stuffer, shovel, dustpan. I now am noticing that I wrote shovel and
That was-
dustpan as the same word.
This is even kind of like dusty.
It is very dirty.
That's so cool.
So stuff like everything you do, you have to document. So, and this, mind you, was my
Nice.
this was my
Wow.
student version. So was graded. I got an A. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um,
This is what you need for any kind of research. You
Yes.
write down things.
everything.
So, because that is what really makes a research and not the personal experience.
Yes.
alone.
No. It's your documentation.
Yeah.
Morgan, you should scan this so you never lose it.
I
should
should.
scan that.
But then it wouldn't have the dirt on it.
That's true, but it'll have the dirt in the photos.
Yeah. So it was the Acropolis was a really, really complex kind of mishmash of buildings, because obviously buildings aren't just used for a single function. So you think about like this space. We just renovated this space.
Mm-hmm.
So they did the same thing. They used buildings for multiple purposes. So you got to track as it was used. So I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this. So I'm really sorry, Professor Hoff and Professor Howe, if I'm not allowed to say it. But I found a body.
Oh,
That's not what I was
But that-
expecting to
but-
hear.
no, but
How
that
did
is
you
what the
feel?
archaeology is
Oh, it was the
about.
greatest.
That's the best part of archaeology,
It
to
is.
find a person and how they lived, how they were buried.
And
That
it
is
was
the
a very rich
Yeah.
grave.
Tell us about
We
it.
found
gold
fish
and
hooks.
diamond.
No, sure did not find that. No.
What was the importance of finding fish hooks, or what did that
cultural.
signify?
It was, well, one, it was harder to identify just because of the soil composition of the grave itself.
Mhm.
It was very, very, it was lots of medium to small size stones and then sand. So things had fallen through and sunk down much farther beneath where the actual body had been buried. There were also, waterways that had kind of taken the whole soil that had been flat and slanted it this way. So you find all of these things, and there's, nails, there's,
Do you think they were ceremonially?
yeah,
buried
it was,
with
yes, there were bricks around
them?
and placed on top of the grave itself. And
Were there items?
yes,
Items?
so there were,
Or
I'm trying to remember.
hers?
There must have been people of influence, or
Yes, so it was
Means.
someone who was buried either in or very, very close to the church. Let me just
yeah.
see if I can pull some pictures. I won't be able to show them on the podcast.
No, don't worry about
I
that.
won't be able to publish them, but I can show you guys. Sorry.
Wow,
Yes.
I'm feeling lucky.
Me too.
So there, as we were, bringing our levels down and continuing to remove the soil, you're finding all kinds of different things, and there's different architectural features that you're seeing built into that you're going, all right, so if I have a window that's here and a staircase that covers the window, I know the window was built before the staircase was built.
They always recycle the structures and the buildings, and that is a very common thing. That today we flatten out everything, move everything away, build everything new. They always would build on the previous structure and add to that, take the structure away, recycle it, and so on. And that is practically why you can find the element after element in one structure that are the things that might have been part of 7 different.
Yeah.
So again, terribly sorry I can't show you.
Wow.
But so this is the grave. So we have the skull here.
It's amazing.
And then actually the mandible was located in the condyle of the humerus. So it had just
So it
slid
fell
down.
off, yeah.
So it had just slid from where it had been up here and was found down there. So there wasn't actually found at the level of the grave itself, but there were items that were found beneath it. So because of this soil texture, it's pretty easy to assume that things just kind of fell through. But again, there was also other uses of the building underneath it. So
What year do you think that
this was
person was?
Byzantine.
Byzantine.
So
500 years.
1100 AD roughly.
Do you think that was a male or a female?
It's hard to say just because that soil I'm not a
Right.
professional.
They can-
Based on the things that were in there.
It's still really hazard. You can guess that it was a male because it was in an important building.
Okay.
Mhm.
There you go.
That's the best.
Yeah.
That
They
makes
really
sense.
weren't burying women in those places.
Yeah.
Sorry, ladies.
Yeah.
Even
that
if it
is-
was like the wife
Nah.
of.
No.
Yeah,
No.
maybe they would bury the wife with the husband, but which one of the wives?
Yeah,
Sometimes
you gotta
it
pick
was.
one.
To get a huge grave.
Yeah.
Lots of bones.
Well, unfortunately, she just mentioned that it was a very patriarchal society, and yeah, if you have something of mean, is usually a male, dominant male of some standing in the society that was buried that way.
But so after we had removed the body itself, we were left with this grave.
Okay.
So bringing down the levels of the grave, and again with the soil texture, these are very large stones. So
Yeah.
these are big boys. And again, I'm a very severe arachnophobe. I have a very strict rule about legs. So I was trying to bring down the level in this trench, and every time I looked at the south wall funny, something would crumble, just because of the soil.
Yeah.
And every time it crumbled, it had a little friend on it.
Oh gosh.
Every single time. And I have these very clear memories of like standing up and putting my hands on the side of this grave going, remember why you want to be in this grave. Remember how cool this is. Remember how lucky you
That's
are.
a Halloween
Get back
right
in
there.
the hole. You have to get back in the hole.
There's no spider spray allowed there.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. But so you find pottery it's the ancient plastic. So you find pottery everywhere. You
Yeah.
find animal bone everywhere. The best way you can tell the difference between pottery and bone when it's covered in dirt is you lick it.
I've heard that on
You do
TikTok.
what?
You lick it.
No, there's this girl in TikTok that like goes to streams and licks rocks to see if they're
Okay, well that's a
How does
different.
licking distinguish between
Okay,
the
well
pottery and
I've
the
got
bone?
like mine's a reason. The bone is porous, so it sticks to your tongue, versus the rock is a rock
Yeah.
and the pottery is a pottery. And like the very worst case scenario, you can lick it and you can't tell,
And
but
it
you can like
slides
then
off.
it's at least wet, so you can clean it off more. But no, the bone sticks to your tongue because of the holes inside the bone.
beautiful.
So it sticks. So yeah, I've licked a lot of dirt.
If you go for a walk and you find something you're not sure if it's a bone or not, now you
Lick
know.
it.
Lick it,
You,
exactly.
you know, I'm not going to go ahead and advocate that in
You
every
heard it from
scenario.
the doctor
Yeah,
himself.
but you know the doctor said so. So I'm
after hundreds of years, I don't believe there's anything contagious kind of after hundreds of years.
Really?
well.
Hundreds of
But if
years.
you're talking about just anybody finding anything when they're walking around in the local neighborhood, if
In
you're
my
on a dig
backyard.
site, if you're on an archaeological site, that's good advice. If you're in your backyard or like walking around,
Now just go
Or-
lick it.
You
That's
never
all.
Yeah,
know.
maybe don't.
You never know what you can find in your backyard. Morgan
But
found an
probably don't lick it.
arrowhead.
Even if you find an animal, just pick up and lick it. Then,
yeah, they love
Yeah.
that.
They
Wild
love that.
animals.
Especially Lily.
Especially raccoons.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, don't get.
no, that was a joke. Don't go and lick things you find
Please don't.
outside, okay? So, well, actually, that has been such a great entry to Turkish archaeology.
Mm-hmm.
We can do a part 2.
We definitely should do part 2.
Yeah.
But actually, as somebody who is the Turkish origin, I mean, Azeri, which is very close to Turkish, and I'm happy that you noticed that the warm-heartedness of the people and
They truly, and I know there's so much apprehension in the world, and I went in the middle of a great amount of political unrest in Turkey,
but that
and
never
I
goes to where
could not
those people are.
advocate anymore. If you ever have the remote chance to go, for the love of God, go. It is truly the most beautiful place I have ever been, and I've been lucky enough to go a lot of places.
That's where you're going.
Morgan, do you mind if I put some of your photos
not
up on the
at all.
camera?
Yeah, so you
I just
go,
want to do a little slideshow.
you go then take it and do a slideshow and to show people what they're missing.
The
So-
ones that you want me to show.
I was part of the
This is really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that
that was
is-
a head of a statue that was found in the
That
actual
almost
bathtub.
that almost looked Greek.
Yeah, again.
Roman, yeah.
So part of the thing I did with Professor Rao was a study of the amphorae that have been found in the local area, both on land and in the sea.
Yeah.
What were these? How do you want to describe them?
That's a colonnaded street. So that's actually, I want to say, imported. I love that you're just like sneaking it very slowly closer. I appreciate it. So it's a colonnaded street. So those columns had been standing on that side. So you can kind of see those little steps. Those columns had been erect just about there and had all fallen. Actually, when I was at Antioch, my second year, we had a big column raising. So they had 2 of the columns rebuilt and stood them back up on their original pedestals that had been kind of re-engineered. So here's the Hagia Sophia
This is Morgan.
in Istanbul.
Hi, Sophia.
This is a really cute puppy.
This is
That
just
was,
a cute puppy, just so you guys.
and it was a local family that had
I
puppies.
see that they wanted to find you a husband right there.
Yeah.
You
Some
know?
things never change.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it was truly just some of the most beautiful locations, people, things that you could possibly see. And you walk around these sites and you walk past, museum quality artifacts that are just hanging out, just where they've been for the last 1,000 years.
Und als ob das alles nicht genug war, dann bist du auch nach Deutschland gegangen.
Bin ich nach Wien.
Nach
In
Wien.
Wien,
Was
ja.
hast du denn da gemacht?
Dort habe ich ein Jahr mein Masterstudium gemacht. Es war für mich nicht so perfekt, ein Platz, aber es war ganz toll, in Wien zu leben.
Das ist natürlich ein schönes Stadt.
Es ist ganz, ganz schön, ja. Auch.
Ja. But
Thank you guys for watching. This was really great.
This can go on. This conversation will go on.
Yes.
Okay, take care.
Well, thank you very much. This is Dr. Abbasi,
I'm Amanda Armagas.
I'm Morgan Wykor.
and welcome to Essence of History, Turkish Roman.
Part one.
Part one. Thank you.